Hello, hello. Here we go again. This is Biweeklycast. The host is still the same. We are here. I'm Dima engineer at Meta.
I'm Slava, CEO at Savvy.
This is great because you are a manager, right? And also being a CEO, I think. Well, no. I take that back. I know for a fact that you're a leader, not because you are CEO. You are CEO because you are a leader. And I wanted to talk to you about this relationship between management and leadership. Somehow recently I've been thinking about that a lot. Well, relatively a lot. And I've got some thoughts about how, especially when we look at middle management, I want to say that sometimes maybe we get more management than leadership, and I would appreciate if we got more leadership than management. And we will see if it all makes sense.
And probably this is where we should start with definitions, because people could definitely perceive it differently.
To say that, and I come prepared. I don't recall where I took those definitions from, but I think I can stand by these definitions that I'm going to pronounce just now. I think I'll probably start with management. I don't know, like in our notes, it's vice versa, but I think it would make sense to start with management. And according to this definition, management is a process of planning, organizing, and controlling resources to achieve objectives efficiently and predictably. And therefore, manager would be the person who is practicing the process of planning, organizing, controlling resources to achieve objectives efficiently and predictably. Does this make sense? Cool. 1 point scored. The leadership, according to the definition I have, is the ability to inspire, influence, and guide people toward a shared vision or goal.
This is where I probably disagree.
Okay, interesting.
My definition of leadership would be an ability to spot the biggest challenge for the system and take the responsibility for resolving it. Like whether it's a company, team, or whatever, like the leadership would be an ability to see the core issue, like the biggest challenge, and to comprehend it and probably do something about it.
Let me dwell on this a little bit. I feel like I maybe disagree a little bit with your definition, which would not be surprising given that you disagree with mine. And there, I think I would want to clarify a particular moment there where you say that a leader is the one who sees the biggest problem and maybe then shepherds people towards resolving that problem. Does this also imply that leader is kind of the smartest person in the room, because like he is able to see what's most important, what's critical, and presumably others aren't able to see that?
That's not what I said. Moreover, I haven't even compared this person to anyone else, because I think that for a bigger system, there are multiple issues and people could judge their value very differently. But people who still see something can't be indifferent and choose to act themselves and engaging people around them to solve something. I think it's not about the comparing with who is the smarter one.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Maybe I put words a little bit in your mouth, but I think I see. I think what you are saying in my definition is like inspire toward a shared vision or goal. You kind of complementing and also saying that leaders should also be able to offer something that can become shared vision, or the big problem to solve, not just guide towards that thing.
Yeah, because if it's just a vision and goal, I see a lot of visionaries who actually don't take the responsibility for the execution, who don't care about the way how it's done. They just care about shaping the vision and that's it, which doesn't seem like leadership.
That I agree. I think the definition would be better shaped as leadership is ability to offer inspiring vision or something like that, offer a vision that can become shared and then inspire, influence, and guide people toward sort of achieving or going towards that vision.
I could work with that.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's better. I agree with that. And another thing that I've got in terms of definitions, that's not a definition. That's a judgment statement. Once again, I don't remember where I got this from, but it goes as follows. Management without leadership can result in efficiency without progress or meaning. Is to relate those two things. Do you think that's a fair statement?
I think by the definition of efficiency, it is the resources you spend to achieve a goal, then it kind of means that it's kind of hard to do without progress or meaning. It could be the wrong goal or something irrelevant or a mistake. But generally, efficiency seems like it has progress and meaning embedded. It doesn't have to be the right meaning or the proper progress.
Mm-hmm.
But no.
Okay, but I think the point of of that last statement was to kind of emphasize the importance of sort of both. You ought to have a fair degree of both of those things in order to achieve success or greatness, however we want to call it. Probably like you already said, like if you are a leader, like visionary leader who doesn't take responsibility and accountability for actually making progress towards that vision, like we will look down upon you. And also, and likewise, if you are super effective manager, managing everything super efficiently for no particular, I want to say for no particular reason, but towards no particular goal, then also there will be questions. And I guess one thing I wanted to explore deeper in there is specific, maybe the way I came to them would be specific failure modes where managers, especially like I said, managers like middle managers who are not necessarily have a direct expectation for them to be leaders, still need to have that healthy degree of leadership in what they're doing, or exercise healthy degree of leadership to be successful and to ensure that their teams or departments or whatever it is that they manage are also successful. And I came up with 4 such failure modes, which I'll try to describe you and see if you think that they make sense and if they resonate with you or not, or like to see if I maybe am entirely out of whack. So first failure mode, I call it, I should have thought about kind of short, kind of catchy names for those things. But the first one would be a situation when there is no value added by the manager. So he's basically retranslating whatever he hears from higher up to the team, and then passes messages from the team, like status reports, whatever it might be, risk assessments and whatever else, to the higher ups for them to make decisions or determinations and something like this. Basically creating no or not much additional value at their level.
I can see how it's an issue, like in many cases. At the same time, I think that administration is kind of important thing in management, and I can totally see how some people tend to combine something entrepreneurial, something administrative, something related to the product, and getting deep into what's happening. But sometimes when it's a bigger thing and bigger organization, you probably need managers who can focus on purely administrative work when they don't contribute into the sense and meaning making. I would say that for mid-size and small organization, that is less common. For the bigger teams with thousands of people, I can see some role that could be for managers who are not contributing into the meaning making.
I think like with this thing specifically, I would still expect managers to exercise a little bit of leadership and actually drive or take decisions. And of course, kind of taking decisions should come with accountability and responsibility for them. But decisions, at least in this specific instance, decisions that amount to determining which which information and how it kind of filters both ways, because there is noise on both sides of that equation. It's not an equation, but if a manager is a link between the team and the rest of the company, there is noise on both sides. And the value that manager can bring in this situation is filtering out filtering out noise and maybe protecting the team from unhelpful machinery of the company, and let them, instead of like everyone's freaking out, like, where's the report? Or like, when's delivery date? When is that? Like, he's like, okay, guys, like, here's the report. The next update is next Friday. Like, let my guys work. I think that would be a value add. And likewise, filtering out, kind of making sure that the team, whenever it presents something, it presents it in a way that is useful to the company rather than just a set of technical details and stuff like that. And I think that this can be a value that manager can bring in, but it also requires that bit of leadership, kind of stepping up and sort of deciding how this thing goes.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. So then this was the first thing. Second value mode, I think, is not having an opinion. That is like not being a leader for your team, in a sense that you don't particularly know or understand or care what it is that the team is doing and how it ought to do that. I think that there can be multiple different levels on where that opinion can be had, but I still believe it is important to have that opinion, to kind of to be the soul or the face of the team, and like basically something that distinguishes this team or this department from another team or another department, so to speak. Not only functionally, but in a sense how they can have some sort of personality and stand for something.
Can I have a perception check?
Yes, of course.
When you say a vision, you mean just any kind of vision, even if it's not correspondent to the company vision, for instance?
Well, ideally it should be, right? Because
Yeah, but I mean, if it's a manager who has a vision and this vision happens to be misaligned with the organization, is it still a vision and it still qualifies like, all right, at least you have something?
I think that's a surprisingly interesting and I would also say insightful question, because I think I would probably take a manager with misaligned vision over a manager with no vision at all, or manager with no kind of desire or skill to have vision. Because then if it's misaligned, there is a chance we can align or kind of we can navigate the situation. But then if there is like nothing, you basically have nothing to work with.
That is fair.
I think it can be done on multiple levels. I think to me, I was trying to figure out how to name it. And I think the symptom of this would be kind of not having an opinion. But I also think that to me, that relates to ability to answer the question, what is this team best at, or something along those lines? What is it that team tries to do in the best possible way? And that I think can often be a reflection of that vision of the manager slash leader, kind of a reflection of their opinion about what this team is.
I think I would rephrase that, because I think what this team is best at is not the way I would perceive it. I would probably say why this team exists, like what's the purpose, rather than best, because best seems a bit, they could be great at something, but that's not the reason why they were here. They're amazing communicators, but guys, you're engineers. Like, you have to do the engineering first.
Yeah, I can see that. I think still. I still think that both you and I are right in our own ways, in a sense that, yes, why for the team is very important. And I think with anything, why is important, but also it can be that the team exists there to, let's say, maintain the old system. Right? It kind of maybe a fair explanation why the team exists. That's kind of their purpose. But then if on top of that, and people can see how maintaining an old system can be a dull work, and like maybe no one wants to work on that team. But if they say, oh no, like we are going to be, I guess, like the best at maintaining old I didn't want to use the word old. Like we are the best at effectively maintaining large code bases. So like we can kind of do stuff with them such that it helps us maintain this large, like supposedly large old system, and kind of we develop things in a way or around the system such that they help us maintain that system, rather than just being pitiful about, like, instead of working on new shiny system, we are here maintaining an old clog.
I'm still a bit triggered by the word best. I just think that they could be really best at doing this, even not within the organization, but in the world. It's just irrelevant. It could be a thing that they're really good at, but that's not helping the company.
Could be. Maybe I'm a little bit off, but I think that would be an element where I think I would love to, like, when I come into a team, I would love, like, to understand what are the things they try to do in the best possible way in their line of work.
May I suggest an alternative phrasing here? Maybe it could reconnect two of our visions. I would say that maybe it's about the identity of the team. Like how they perceive themselves and how they understand the nature of their work.
Yep, I think that's related to it. That's a good word. Identity is a good thing to have.
So basically, a manager is the identity provider, or at least supporter, like the one who facilitates the...
Right. Like, circling back, we would expect them to have an opinion about what is the identity of the team and actively contribute to building and developing that identity, rather than saying, like, oh, we are a group of people over here doing whatever powers that be tell us to do. Cool. I think we touched on this a little bit, because I think it kind of comes for granted, but maybe not so. It's not taking responsibility for your opinions, if you have them, and the decisions you make. Because sometimes I think I've heard about stories where, in some podcasts and things like that, where folks would say, we always made the right choices. Like, you know, in the company, maybe then kind of the org structures are changed and stuff like that. And sometimes those changes can be successful. Sometimes they can be less successful, but sometimes people try to portray everything as a progress going forward, without admitting that, hey, we did this thing, we had good reasons to do them, they didn't work exactly as we expected, because, like, that's kind of obvious. It can be obvious to everyone around, and not saying that, I think, is a sign of poor leadership on management's part.
Maybe it's a bit nerdy, but could you define the responsibility here? Like, taking responsibility means...
Yeah, saying, like, this was kind of my decision, we went with it, and it was not as good as I thought it to be back in the day when we took it, or something along those lines.
Accepting the consequences does not really mean taking the full responsibility. Like, you can say, like, yeah, that's my fault, my bad. Like, is it the responsibility? Guys, you're fired. I like, sorry.
Well, I think that probably would be a good start, in kind of with positive attitude. We would expect lessons to be learned from that, and kind of some openness and transparency about those lessons. But admitting that things weren't always great, I think, is a good start.
Yeah, it is. But I think I just see responsibility a bit more in actions, like when you act upon mistakes and you fix the stuff you broke, or at least you find the way to compensate it, rather than just owning the...
Well, yeah, I think I cannot agree more. But I also think it starts with just admitting. Admission is also like a step in the right direction. And I think the fourth one, and I think that's gravest sin? Like what's the phrase I'm looking for? Deadliest sin or something? Well, them all would be if manager acts as a consultant rather than kind of treats themselves as a part of the team to actually come in and take action where appropriate to solve biggest problems or challenges.
Could it be just the summary of the previous three? No value added, no opinions, no responsibility.
It could be. Maybe it's just more specific manifestation of the combination of those three
perhaps.
things.
I've seen a few managers like that. They usually prefer to be named, we are managing in the coaching style, meaning we will just ask you the questions, never ever saying what we think or what should be done or what's the point. Just like, and what do you think? Why would you do that? What's your way out? Like, how would you approach that? Yeah, go and do that. Good luck. Like, didn't work. Why didn't it work? It didn't work because of that. What could you do about that? Like, yeah, please go and do that as well.
Interesting. Like somehow you saying that this style of management has a name. Did I hear that correctly? People call it coaching style management, and it's a. Are you saying it's a thing?
It is. People actually learn how to do that.
I need a moment to contemplate this information, because I thought that people would subconsciously do something like this, not realizing that it is, people would not care about my expectations, but at least it doesn't match my expectation of management and leadership at all.
That wouldn't be the first thing in our podcast that doesn't match your expectation.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. At least in that, it consistently matches the expectations of not matching my expectations. But I'm still amazed. Coaching style management. Okay, at any rate, if there is such a thing, which I truly, fully believe you that there is such a thing, we don't approve of it here. I don't think. Like, do you approve of something like that?
I think that for specific cases, when you work with a person capable of defining the problem, finding the solution, and doing all the right things, coach and management could be quite handy. Moreover, if you don't do that, you will probably discourage the person, demotivate the person, and this person will not be eager to face such challenges in the future. At the same time, when it's an extreme and it's exercised for everyone in 100% of cases and situations, I think like in any extreme measure, it just doesn't work. So I would say that, let me give you an example. Let's say there was a screw up in our team. And this screw up could be done by a junior person who screwed up because one didn't know how it should be done. And I can coach this person for years and weeks, but this person doesn't have the experience to understand what happened because it's not in this person's expertise. The second case, there is a more experienced person who faced an issue, and I can either provide the corrections, like what could be done better, or I could ask this person's opinion, like, what do you think could be done better here? It's a good question to start, right? And if the person answers or provides the issues the way I see them, the next follow-up question could be, like, what would you do? But I do have my points listed, and they just match, so I don't have to repeat them. I can correct them or add if they mismatch, but if they match, it actually makes sense to ask the next question, like, what do you think is the solution? Normally here, where we like take different ways, and as a manager, you can step in and still show, like, no, let's probably not do your way, let's do it an alternative way. But when you work with a person who is even more experienced than you, let's say my CPO, Chief Product Officer, it's hard for me to actually give some solid advice or directions or guidance. because he's way more experienced than I am. So in 9 conversations out of 10, I either just listen to him, given some provocative questions, clarifications, etc., or I ask like him to formulate the core issue, to tell me the few ways out, and pick one that he finds as optimal. And in most situations, it works. So I would say that by this level of competence, the higher the competence, the more often you have to apply this coaching style in management. Competence plus experience, I would say.
I think that's fair. I think I agree that with the different levels, the different approaches to management and leadership are required. I'm still I'm so impressed with this whole coaching management thing. I think at that higher up, I would expect the situation to develop more into kind of partnership type of dynamics rather than coaching, not coaching that, because then it did like the power differential is going to be more shallow the more senior, the more experienced you are. And then at that level, we also expect people to have more prominent areas of expertise or skill that they bring to the table. And then we usually start to try to complement each other with like, my strength is here, here's my weakness, but you can fill in, like kind of together we can be that proverbial 1 + 1 = 3 type of a thing.
Makes sense. But I also hear, please, anything but coaching. Let it be partnership, let it be synergy, all the other buzzwords, but not coaching.
I think, yeah, maybe we can talk. Well, and I need to admit, first of all, like my knowledge about coaching specifically and the kind of the terminology and approaches used there is only rudimentary. So I would be open-minded to have my thoughts corrected about that, but somehow I'm not ready to accept this as a management methodology just yet. Well, so that kind of brings me to the end of the list of 4 failure modes, which I think signify when a manager would typically be how do we call it? Like institutional designation, right? Yes, people would have manager in their titles in the kind of hierarchy in the company or something like that. So they would have more or less explicitly defined expectations coming from that angle. We rarely have someone designated with positions designated as leader or kind of, well, lead maybe, leader less so. But with all this, I wanted to reemphasize that like managers, you do need to show and exercise some leadership in what you do in order to successfully lead your teams to success. How successful is that?
Quite successful.
All right. So those 4 things, any takeaways, any things that jumped at you in our discussion?
I think I will take some time to consider the idea about a vision of a manager, whether it is essential and whether it is helpful if it doesn't match the company vision. And the other thing that I would probably have to take some time to think about your 4th point about being a consultant, because I think in my understanding right now, it's probably a symptom of the previous points rather than a standalone thing, but I might be wrong there.
It could be. I'm still stunned by this whole concept coaching style membership, but this is one thing like I would take my time to dig a little bit deeper into that to understand what it means and be, I think probably more importantly, the domain of applicability, because like we know some things have, like all things, they have their place and time. Probably there is a place and time for coaching style management. I'd love to understand more about when that would work. But that was point number 1. Point number 2 is that it's been a while since we asked our listeners to interact with us. And well, first, subscribe and like on YouTube, subscribe and like. I'm not sure if we have subscribed. Well, we have subscribed. I'm not sure about like us on Spotify where this podcast is published, or subscribe to us in any podcast receiver or podcast player of your choice. That was number 2. And also come to our site, biweeklycast.com, leave comments and take a look at all the previous episodes that we have there. That would be point number 2. And point number 3, given the point in time where we are now, I would love to say anyone happy holidays.
Happy holidays indeed.
And good weeks.